Hi, everyone. So I have to start out by saying that being on a stage in front of 500 people is totally out of my comfort zone. It's not my normal at all. What feels more normal to me is crawling around on this floor and getting the shot and being behind the lens, being a quiet observer, and being a fly on the wall. And that sort of has been me for a really long time. And so when Saul and Tori called this spring and left me a message on my phone and said, "Hey, Steph, we have a question for you about BIF," my first thought was like, oh man, maybe they don't need me this year. What a bummer, because I love photographing BIF. It's one of my favorite things to do every year. And the wisdom and the golden nuggets I get every year are amazing. And so I called them, and Saul and Tori had a different agenda. They wanted to replace my camera with a microphone, a teeny tiny microphone. And hold on one second, I gotta think about what I want to say. Oh, and so any other year, I would have ran and hid under a rock, but something in me has shifted in the past 18 months, and I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that. And I've gone from being a little passive in my life to more active and intentional, and being a quiet observer to more of a creator, going from behind the lens to actually stepping up on this stage and using my voice. So my work with BIF began about 10 years ago when they were working on a project called The Nursing Home of the Future. And they hired me for 3 months to go in and document life in a nursing home here in Rhode Island. And it was one of the coolest projects. I got to know the staff and the residents and be a part of a community that I had never been part of before. And they hired designers to look at what was life like and what could the nursing home of the future look like. And the coolest part about this project was that after the designers had seen my images and heard my own experiences of walking around the halls and talking to people, they commented on how much it had influenced their design process and how it sort of had changed the way they thought about what the nursing home in the future might look like. This project was a true gift. And so my work with BIF continued. This is my normal. And I've had the opportunity to photograph, like Saul said, about 9 years or so of this conference every year. And my goal every year is to really capture the mood and the magic and the excitement that happens here and the ruckus, and in still photographs, the connections that are being made, the bigger moments. How do I, in one photograph, tell what the speaker is portraying and the feeling that they're giving and the feeling we're feeling as an audience? And my process is this. When I'm shooting, part of my brain is paying attention and getting the shot, and like I said, how do I tell this story in one image? And the other part of my brain is trying to listen and hear and capture those nuggets that I'm hearing from the speakers or overhearing in conversations between attendees. And I felt like this is kind of a metaphor for my life. I was half listening for a long time. I felt like part of me was asleep at the wheel, and I wanted something more. And so I enlisted the help of, you might know this woman. I enlisted the help of coaches. I hired a photo mentor. I sought advice, and I took that advice from these mentors and coaches, and I went with it. And I didn't stop. And I had to change a couple things in my life. I started to take care of myself in a way that I hadn't. I'm a parent, and often as parents, sometimes we tend to neglect ourselves, right? Because we're caring for our family. And my idea of self-care at that point was a pedicure, which, don't get me wrong, pedicures are awesome. But that was kind of the extent. And so I learned to take care of myself. I thought about what I was putting in my body food-wise, and I started to be in a way that I hadn't been before. And I also had to take a look at relationships in my life that were somewhat toxic. And I had to turn away from them so that I could follow on a path that was moving forward. I had to turn down the noise because it was distracting me from going this way. And so one of my mentors, I wanted a deeper connection with my work too. Not like it wasn't meaningful before, but I wanted, like I said, I wanted something more. And so one of my mentors said, Steph, why don't you work on a personal project? So I went to my neighborhood. I live near South Providence, and I just started walking the streets and asking people if I could photograph them. And I would meet these beautiful strangers, and they might not be long conversations, but I would get just enough. And I started to get so much out of this. And I think they did too. People just want to be seen, right? And so it was a really beautiful exchange that I would have. And so you might be wondering, why, Steph? Like, my friends were like, your life seemed great, right? It was. But there was a desire to change patterns that I had been living for so long, and these stories of myself that I had been telling myself that weren't always maybe in the most positive light. And the reason I did this and had the drive was because of these two little girls right here. These are my daughters, Claire and Maya. They're 9 and 7, and they needed a strong model in their lives, and to know that if they set their mind to something, they can do anything they want to do. And so my work did become more meaningful, and it's funny, I tell this story that in the past, sometimes, it's a funny story. Sometimes when I would look through the shutter and the subject was looking at me, when I clicked that shutter, sometimes I would close my eyes, and I think part of me was afraid to be seen, or I was afraid to see what was deep down. And once I started showing up for myself, I could start to show up for others, and my clients, and my life, and my business, and it had a direct effect on everything. So I found this poem when I started feeling like I was getting it. I was getting the tools to figure out how to be. And it's called Your Eyes by Jen Jo. Can you please lend me your eyes? Don't be long, I promise. Please let me show you what I see in you. And so the work I do now, I love, every client that walks into my studio is different, or every business I work for is different, and I feel like I can show up for them more and greater and more deeply now, and I can really listen to what kind of images they want, what kind of mood they're trying to portray. Are they trying to show their silly side? Do they have a message? And so this last slide coming up is of a dear friend. She's in the audience today. Her name's Betsy. And after we took this image, Betsy said to me, "Who is that?" And I said, "I don't know, but she's really hot." And she said, "Steph, I've been looking or thinking of myself as this 20-year-old athlete for the longest time. And now when I see this image, I look at myself as a professional. And I see myself as my colleagues see me, and I see myself as you see me, Steph. And that's what I love to do. I love to pull what I see in people and show them their best self right back at them. And so I leave you with, I guess, what are the narratives that we hold within ourselves and maybe aren't always the most positive? How can we flip that and turn it into something positive? You know, example of me is when people say, oh, Steph, that's a great photo. I'm like, I just clicked the shutter. But I don't see it like that anymore. It is years, it's 20 years of experience of clicking that shutter, and it's all my life experiences. It goes into that one moment. And that's it. Thanks for listening.